Hi there, I'm Pekamo, the haze mechanic. It's a hot day here in Nigeria, and in the shop here I can see it's about 35 degrees centigrade. That's quite hot, and it's been so for a few months. But let's go into today's tutorial. I want to intimate you with how to properly rebuild your engine. So, have you gotten in a situation whereby your client comes in with a situation, or maybe it's your car, you're a DIYer, and you want to get your car fixed because there's a rod knock situation which might have resulted in a spun bearing situation? Yeah, I want to share some tips with you from my experience in engine rebuild for a few years now. Now, this is a piston and a connecting rod assembly. As you can see, I have my rings on, and this is a piston ring and connecting rod setup that I'm taking back into an engine I'm rebuilding, and this is from a 1ZZFE. And now let me start by intimating you with a few things that you might want to know in terms of the registers of the trade. This is your ring gland. This is your first compression ring, your second compression ring, and this is your oil control ring, which includes two scraper rings at the top and the bottom, and also an expander ring. Here is your wrist pin in here that holds your piston in place to your connecting rod, and the wrist pin is secured by this snap ring that's inside its groove here to ensure that the wrist pin does not slide off and scrape the walls of the cylinder. And also, as you can see, this is your connecting rod. Now, your connecting rod has a big end and a small end. Now, it's the small end that your wrist pin goes into. The big end is where you have the journal of your crankshaft. It's on this big end in many cases that you have a rod knock, whereby there's a play between the connecting rod, and when the engine is running, you'll be having a noise like this. This is the damaged connecting rod from the engine after it started having rod knock, and of course it has developed a spun bearing. Looking at the big end of the connecting rod, you feel all is still fine, especially because this part that is going to house the bearing of the connecting rod is still shiny. But please, I beg you once again, don't be tempted to reuse it. This is a good one that I'm replacing. Is a used one. It's from a engine that was good, and I'm replacing it to take the place of the bad one. If you look at it closely, you are less likely to find any major difference in the two if you look at it much closely, but the fact is that there's quite a lot of difference. Let me do something. If you want to go scientific to kind of prove that this connecting rod is still fine, and you use a vernier caliper to measure the inner diameter. From what I have here, I have 4.69, and you think you're on point and everything is fine. Yes, that's what you're going to think. Now let me measure the good one, the replacement one that is still within spec. So here also, on the good one, I have 4.69, and that's on the scientific note. We'll want to make you feel that everything is fine with it, but please don't be tempted. I've done it before and it didn't go well. What I need you to know is that when we had the rod knock situation and the bearing started spinning with the crankshaft, it was riding inside here, and there was no room for oil supply, because the oil supply is supposed to come from the crankshaft journal to lubricate between the crankshaft journal and the connecting rod inner face. But now the connecting rod bearing has covered up and has binded with the crankshaft journal and is now running inside of this place, and you expect that there will be a lot of friction and heat generated here in the absence of lubrication, and that's why you definitely have a process of loss and reception of material. So the bearing material, being a lighter material, is going to wear and stick onto this surface. So gradually layers of the bearing material will start melting and will be attached to the inner surface of this connecting rod big end, and with that you can be sure that even though this has been worn slightly, the reason why you're having fairly approximately the same inner diameter reading from between the bad one and the good one is because even after this place has been worn, there had been a collection of material, deposit of material from the bearing material onto this inner surface of the big end, and that has made it possible for you to have relatively the same diameter. Another proof to show that there is a collection of material, deposit of material of the bearing material onto this inner surface of the big end of the connecting rod is that if you look here closely, you see a piece of metal sticking out there. That's part of the bearing material that got bound with this connecting rod. And also, if you look at the good one I'm using as a replacement, you see that there's a lubrication hole here, which I believe is to squirt some oil to lubricate the cylinder wall. But on the bad one, you can see that there is no hole anymore. You see the vestige of the hole. The hole is supposed to be here, but you can see that it has been plugged by the deposited bearing material. So there is no way this cylinder is not going to suffer, because there will be no way oil is going to get there, and you won't know all this, and there will be a compromising of the surface of this place that is going to, or that is supposed to hold the bearing in place. Everything is just going to go out of spec without you really knowing exactly what happened. So sometimes you might be tempted to just make it a shortcut job, to just pull the bottom pan of the engine, and if it has a sub crankcase, to pull away the sub crankcase. In some cases they have baffles, to pull out the baffle, access the connecting rod bearing caps. You use a sandpaper with wet sanding and try to polish the surface of the journal and replace with a replacement bearing. More often than not, it's not likely to work. So if you want to do it at all, do it right. I believe you must have learned a thing or two from this piece. This is my first video on YouTube, and I'm happy you are watching. Please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until I bring another piece your way, nearest and soonest, please keep doing things right.